The HOA thought they could push around a simple woman. They thought they could trespass, intimidate, and threaten her into submission. What they didn't know was that my wife wasn't defenseless, and she wasn't alone. Standing beside her were two retired military K9s, Brutus and Delta, dogs trained to take down armed suspects in combat zones. So when the HOA decided to teach her a lesson, they had no idea they were walking straight into a fight they could never win. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. It started small, the way these things always do. A letter taped to our door from the HOA president, Karen. Remove the dogs. They disrupt property values. I laughed when I read it. Dogs lower property values? That's a new one. But my wife Elaine didn't laugh. She knew what HOAs were capable of. Fines, intimidation, even lawsuits. Brutus and Delta weren't just pets, they were family, loyal partners who had served with me overseas before I retired. They were disciplined, obedient, and harmless unless commanded. But Karen didn't see that. To her, they were a weapon she could twist into a violation. A second letter came. This one slid under the door, unmarked. Comply, or it will get worse. That's when I noticed the drone. It hovered over our backyard, dipping low enough to make Delta snarl and Brutus pace the fence. One night, I tracked it with binoculars and watched it land right on Karen's balcony. When I confronted her at the next HOA meeting, she didn't even deny it. She just smiled and said neighborhood safety requires oversight. If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. Oversight turned to harassment. Boot prints appeared near our shed. Brutus barked at shadows that weren't there. Then came the so-called compliance officers. 4 of them marched up our driveway with clipboards citing Municipal Code Section 14B and demanding our fence be torn down. But when I checked county records, that code didn't even exist. Under Title 18 U.S. Code 242, it's illegal to deprive someone of their rights under color of law. But these men didn't care about the law. One leaned close and muttered, "Some rules aren't written down." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about dogs or fences. This was personal. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was building pressure, pushing us toward a breaking point. The HOA picked the wrong day to test us. It was Saturday morning, clear skies, kids playing on the street, and Elaine was out front tending to her flowers. That's when the compliance team rolled up again. 4 men, this time not even pretending to be friendly. Karen stood behind them with her phone raised like she was live streaming the whole thing. "Remove the dogs, remove the fence, or we remove you," one of them barked. Elaine stood her ground. "This is private property. Under Fourth Amendment protections, you can't just barge in without a warrant. Leave now." They didn't. One stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "We don't need a warrant. HOA authorization is enough." That was a lie. HOA rules can't override federal or state law, and under Penal Code 602, trespassing is a criminal offense. But these men weren't bluffing. They were ready to use force. I was halfway down the driveway when the first one lunged at Elaine. He reached for her arm, but Brutus was faster. The German Shepherd launched like a missile, performing a drive bite straight to the chest. The man was slammed flat onto the pavement, wind knocked out of him, Brutus standing over him with a deep growl vibrating in his throat. Another grabbed a metal rod and swung at Delta. Wrong move. The Belgian Malinois darted sideways, then latched onto his forearm with a controlled bite hold. He howled, dropping the rod, and Delta didn't shred him. She immobilized, locked in perfect discipline, exactly as she had been trained. "Call them off! Call them off!" Karen screamed, but her voice cracked. "Delta, hold!" Elaine commanded firmly. The dog froze, jaws locked, pinning the man in place without tearing him apart. Controlled, precise, military discipline. The third thug tried to flank them, rushing toward my wife. Brutus spun, eyes locked, waiting. Elaine snapped her command. "Brutus, drive!" The shepherd charged, colliding into the man's midsection and sending him sprawling into the dirt. He never even touched her. By then, neighbors had poured out with phones recording everything. Shouts filled the street. "They're trespassing! Call the cops!" "Karen's lost her mind!" One of the attackers tried to scramble away, but Delta's ears flicked at Elaine's voice. "Release!" Instantly she let go, stepped back, and sat at her handler's heel, calm and obedient, as if nothing had happened. That discipline was the difference between a pet and a trained soldier. Karen's face twisted. "This is assault! Your animals are out of control." I stepped forward, phone recording, and said loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "No, Karen, Under California Civil Code 3342, liability doesn't apply if a dog defends its handler from trespassers committing a crime. You just filmed your own people attacking my wife. Karen's confidence cracked. The crowd murmured, siding with us. The HOA's intimidation had backfired. Their thugs lay on the ground humiliated, and Brutus and Delta stood proudly, tails wagging, waiting for the next command. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to take a loss quietly. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe, because the story is only going to get better. By the time the sheriff's deputies arrived, Karen had already twisted herself into a full-blown victim act. "They set their attack dogs on us," she screeched, holding her phone up like evidence. "These animals are weapons. I demand they be destroyed." Her thugs groaned in the background, clutching bruised chests and arms where Brutus and Delta had put them down. None of them wanted to look the deputies in the eye. Elaine calmly clipped both dogs to their leads. They sat obediently at her side, calm and alert. Not wild, not aggressive, just trained professionals in fur. That discipline spoke louder than Karen's hysteria. I handed one deputy my phone. "You'll want this. I caught everything from the moment they stepped onto my property. The video played, the trespass, the threats, the lunges toward my wife, and then the dogs responding exactly as trained." The deputy's jaw tightened. He didn't even finish the clip before lowering the phone. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, "you and your associates are under investigation for criminal trespass under Penal Code 602 and assault under Penal Code 240. Those dogs didn't attack without cause. They defended their handler from an imminent threat." Karen's voice cracked. "That's not true. The HOA authorizes. HOA rules," the deputy cut in. "Don't supersede state law. You had no authority to enter their yard or put your hands on anyone. Frankly, you're lucky those dogs are disciplined. A lesser-trained animal could have done permanent damage." Brutus sat tall, chest out, ears forward. Delta glanced at Elaine, waiting for her next command, perfectly still. They weren't just pets. They were soldiers. My wife had spent years training dogs like them for the military, and now they had saved her in civilian life. Karen tried one last desperate angle. Then fine, charge me, but at least those beasts get put down. That's what happens when dogs bite people. The deputy shook his head. Wrong again. California Civil Code 3342 specifically exempts dogs who defend their owners from trespassers committing crimes. These animals won't face consequences. You will. The crowd erupted. Neighbors cheered, clapped, even whistled. Phones were still recording, and Karen's meltdown was going viral in real time. The deputies cuffed her right there on the sidewalk. Her face burned red as they read her rights. The thugs were loaded into the back of the cruiser too, whining louder than before. As the squad cars rolled away, Elaine knelt down and hugged both Brutus and Delta. Their tails wagged, happy to finally relax. "You see that?" I said, smiling. "They didn't just protect you. They exposed Karen for what she really is." My wife looked at me, eyes fierce but proud. "They're not just dogs, they're family. And Karen just learned the hard way what happens when you mess with family." The neighborhood had changed that day. The HOA's reign of intimidation was broken, and for the first time in years, our home finally felt safe again. And me? I knew one thing for sure. Brutus and Delta had just written their names into HOA history.